Hello, everybody, and welcome to this global Azure session on Gimme Cloud Talks. Hopefully, you've enjoyed a lot of the sessions that we've been hosting here at Gimme Cloud Talks, as well as the other sessions around the world that are listed at globalazure.net for all of the different groups, user groups, and leaders and community contributors across the globe that are presenting and providing a means for all of this training. So this is my third session of today. I did Connecting in the Clouds with Amy Collier earlier today. Just finished up Path to Cloud Security, and now for my last session of the day, I am moderating a couple more as part of Gimme Cloud Talks. But what I wanted to talk to you in this session is architecting a zero trust framework within Azure. And so around that aspect of things is, when we're talking about architecting, we're talking about architecting in cybersecurity, architecting a strong, secure framework. Zero trust always comes up, and I talked about it, wrote about it in my SC 100 guidebook. I also wrote about it on the Azure Spring Clean post that I did a couple months ago. So let's go into what we're going to talk about here today. So, what is zero trust is key. Why zero trust, and then we're going to talk about the 6 pillars of zero trust and how we are securing them. Okay, and what goes into that within building a zero trust architecture. For those of you who don't know me or haven't attended any of their sessions, I am Dwayne Natwick. I'm a security MVP with Microsoft. I am also a principal cloud security lead at Eviden, an Atos business, and I am part of the big data and security group within Eviden as a global cloud security lead. Also a certified trainer, work on do content, do presentations, am certified in multiple ISC squared certifications, which is a member independent certification organization, as well as many Microsoft, as well as which includes the entire Microsoft cybersecurity stack, or SC, for security, compliance, and identity, as well as I'm a Microsoft, as well as a solution architect expert and Azure administrator. So I've written 3 books on security. The most recent being the Cybersecurity Architect, which goes into architecting an infrastructure that has a zero trust framework built around it. So if you ever want to follow me on social media, here you go. Here are the links. Like I said, I've written a blog on this as exactly on within Azure, as well as one of the other hyperscalers, to kind of bring to light some of the things to take into account when you're doing when you're building an architecting in the cloud. So let's jump in. What is zero trust? What are we looking for, and what are we doing? The keys to zero trust. There's 3 key points to zero trust. There is verify explicitly. There is adhering to the principles of least privilege, and there is assume a breach. So we want to assume that a breach has happened, and we want to verify, like I said, verify explicitly that somebody is who they say they are, and that they get just in time and just enough access. So if we're thinking just at a base level, we want to make sure and make sure everybody is who they say they are, and that they have the right level of privileges. And those are very key to that. So why do we want to do zero trust? What are some of the benefits of taking a zero trust framework to our architecture? What do we want to do, and why do we want to do it? It builds a more secure architecture. It builds a more compliant architecture. It reduces our risk, which should be key at any cloud adoption and any planning phase of of our life cycle within a cloud environment is really those three areas, right? We want to reduce it. It starts with our level of risk and our risk tolerance, and then from there we decide, based on that risk tolerance, based on the sensitivity of our data, what we need to do to adhere to that. Hold on one second. And so once we take that into account, then we can start taking that zero trust framework and that architecture that we've built to get a higher return on our investment, and maybe even find ways to build better flexibility and cost management within our environment as well. There's a term out there that we talk about around cyber resilience as well as cyber hygiene, and and cyber hygiene was an important one. Elhan did a discussion on that yesterday. If we are adhering to zero trust and we have that framework in place, we're going to be able to govern over our costs better as well, and our cyber hygiene is going to look a lot better, because people aren't getting in there and maybe they're doing crypto mining and things like that within our environments. So we're building that cyber resilience. We're building an infrastructure that adheres to the CIA triad. And those of you that don't know the CIA triad, we're talking about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And it's an isosceles triangle, which I believe that's the right term. I haven't been in geography for a long time. Every side is equal. I believe that's an isosceles triangle. Don't quote me on that, but all sides are equal. So it's a balancing act, right, between maintaining high levels of confidentiality, and with in terms of what we need to have as an organization to protect sensitive data, as well as with compliance and all of those areas. Integrity, making sure that our data is not changed and altered and compromised, and then availability, that it's available and we can get to it, and the people that need to get to it can get to it. Those are all things that we need to take into account, and that hits all of these things as to why zero trust, and we get then a higher return on our investment if we are adhering to those. Now, there are 6 pillars to zero trust. A lot of times zero trust gets lumped in as kind of just an identity piece, but there is zero trust in infrastructure throughout. There's zero trust in networking. There's zero trust for our devices. There's zero trust for our applications, and zero trust for our data. So those are all the areas we need to consider and what we'll talk about in this session. If you look at it and think about it pragmatically, we are looking at ultimately a defense in depth strategy. I see zero trust as the evolution of defense in depth to a degree. Maybe a marketing term to defense in depth, but defense in depth was a marketing term in its own right. We get these terms that we start throwing around and they start getting watered down and maybe losing some of their impact. Zero trust is, everybody's using it, but governments are using zero trust and using it as their framework for protecting their environments. And anybody that is doing their due diligence and due care around security should be taking a defense in depth approach and looking at these pillars here as what we're doing to protect. Ultimately, at the bottom of all of this is our data. At the top of this is our identity, is our access, and our our identifiable information, and who has access and how that all takes place. The only thing that we don't have on here is the physical aspect of defense in depth, which, because we're talking about cloud, it's not necessary. Microsoft or any of the other hyperscalers take care of that security, the security of the cloud, right? As we talk about security of the cloud and security in the cloud and shared responsibility and all those things. So let's talk about identity and talk about that a little bit. I'm going to throw around some terms here and some cliches. Identity is the new perimeter. Identity is the new control plane. Those are all things that we throw around, right? Which goes to my previous comment on the previous slide of we aren't we aren't in control of the physical anymore when we're in cloud environments. That is the cloud provider's responsibility. So therefore, that we need to first and foremost protect identity and access, which is the people that are accessing are who they say they are, and that they have the authorization to access what they're accessing. It goes back to the to the first slide where I stated, oops, I'm in the wrong. 1 second. Just a sec. Bouncing around here. Having Bluetooth device problems here today. Oh, there we go. Hold on. So back to the first slide where I was saying, just in time, just enough access. That's really what we're talking about here in identity. It's the foundation of how we access everything in the cloud. We can use the zero trust principles here to increase our level of integrity that somebody is who they say they are through verifying explicitly, utilizing things like multi-factor authentication and conditional access policies on top of that multi-factor authentication. And, having those policies that are giving access based on, where they are, what network they're on, and what they're accessing in terms of applications. If anybody's utilized or played with conditional access policies, that's exactly what they do within Microsoft. You can do that within other cloud providers as well in different ways to enforce policies and procedures and things of that nature. Infrastructure is a weird one because it is, it's one of the pillars of zero trust, but we cover it to a certain degree also within networking. They kind of blend together a little bit, but the overall infrastructure, the overall wide area network, access to resources outside of your own network, and what permissions to those resources are, what do devices or users or anybody coming in from outside have permissions to, what are those administrative roles and privileges, how are we governing over our entire infrastructure. And to a degree, identity kind of falls, I think, into that infrastructure as well in terms of what we're talking about with roles and privileges. Time-bound access to resources, is the access expiring? You give somebody access to a folder or a file in OneDrive. Maybe it's a contract, maybe it's our accountant we're giving our balance sheet to. Are you just giving them access to that, or are you giving it time-based access? Storage account signatures, we can put expirations on those. Same thing with if like you were sharing something from OneDrive, we can set certain privileges of what they can do on that they can only view, that they can't down. If you're using enterprise level OneDrive for business, you can say they can't download it, and then you can set it up that they can only access it for a certain amount of time, whether that's 12 hours or 24 or an hour, or a month. You can set all of that time-bound level of access, and that's how we protect our infrastructure. That's how we protect our resources from being overexposed. We're decreasing that attack surface, which really zero trust is doing that. It's hopefully tying things in from that standpoint. Networking, again, taking certain principles to how we are designing, how we're architecting our environment. What are we doing? Are we having public and private information go across the same network, or are we doing some level of network of isolation so that somebody that's coming in over the public internet to access our website can't accidentally or purposefully get to our private network? That is all things that we need to consider in terms of our rules of engagement within our network. We want to segment those networks. We want to isolate the public and the private. We with both virtual as well as physical isolation. So if we're in a physical environment, maybe we're putting them in different data centers. We're putting them in different on different racks or switches from a physical standpoint. From a virtual standpoint, we're doing virtual LANs on our smart switches within our data centers. We're using virtual, different virtual networks, or in other hyperscalers, virtual private clouds to separate those resources. So those are all things that we need to consider and think about. Access control lists, network security groups, access policies are all ways now we can, from a software-based standpoint, put rules in place and policies in place to direct that traffic and make sure that traffic stays isolated. If it's personal identifiable information, if it's sensitive information, confidential information, we have those in the proper buckets, and we're only accessing those with proper credentials, proper authorization, as well as only proper permissions are in place, and only proper departments might be able to access certain information. Those are all things that we need to think about. From a device standpoint, we're looking at and thinking about what we're doing to harden those devices. Attack surface reduction, limiting or disabling certain services on those devices that aren't required at startup. Those are things to think about, to take into account. Putting on our mobile devices, mobile device management, or if they're personal devices, but we want to segment and isolate our business information, we put mobile application management in place. Very helpful. One of the things, like for example, within my company, I have a mobile application management policy on my iPhone. One thing that I can't do is if I copy a link from my business email and try to put it in OneNote, or put it on do a search or copy it into a search field on a browser, or if I try to copy that to a personal email address, it will not allow it. That's how mobile application management isolates information from my business to my personal use. So those are all things that take into account and take into and think about when you're doing your architecture. Access policies. What are those access policies of those devices? Again, go back to the conditional access policies. That device, does it have Intune on it? And is it compliant? Has it checked in lately, gotten all the security patches, security updates, all the 0-day vulnerabilities patched and all ready to go before it accesses your company data? Those are all things to take into account. File integrity protection, making sure nobody's going in and altering your files and function and making something, and taking advantage of and compromising that integrity. Data loss prevention is the last one on here. Sorry for not spelling out the acronym, but data loss prevention, DLP, is exactly doing a certain level of managing confidentiality, also managing integrity and the availability of that information by tagging information, putting policies in place so that we don't overshare information. And that's, within Microsoft, those DLP policies work on SharePoint, on OneDrive, on Teams, so that we aren't putting our company at risk. And those are all very important features and functionality that we need to think about. Applications. What are we doing to protect against applications? If we are utilizing like Defender for cloud apps. We can protect against certain vulnerabilities or compliance issues. We can actually recognize and review our the applications that are being accessed, and find out if we've had any shadow IT. Do we have any dangerous applications that are on our network? United States example to this is United States is trying to wipe TikTok from government equipment to maintain levels of compliance, because TikTok is seen as a non-compliant software. So we can utilize Defender for cloud apps as a CASB, as a cloud application security broker, or CASB, to protect against that. Wireless web application firewalls, or WAFs, can protect public websites and protect against Microsoft's WAF in Azure. Actually, you can set to look for the common OWASP attacks, the top 10 attacks like cross-site scripting or SQL injections and things like that can all be looked at in packets and traffic, and block that and protect against potential threats within our environment. The last pillar to think about here is privacy of data, our PII and PHI. Personal identifiable information and personal health information. These, especially within the United States, we have our standards with HIPAA and PCI DSS and all of those. We have the compliance to standards in the EU and UK with GDPR for those privacies. And key thing around this is governing your data, knowing your data, governing that data, and protecting your data. Utilizing things like classification and sensitivity labels within Microsoft Purview really help to do all these things, to really understand your data and protect across all of your resources and all of your data, so you can have have a safe and compliant and private environment, and understand where that data is. First and foremost, and I didn't say this at the top of the session, but you should understand and think about each of these pillars when you're planning, and think about all of the areas of zero trust and protecting information, sensitive information, classified information, PAI, PHI throughout your organization. It should be a plan. And I mentioned that when I was mentioning like managing risk and understanding risk. And one of the key components, if you're looking at a risk management framework, is that preparation stage. What is your risk tolerance? What level of risk are you going to allow? What are your risks? And then what risks are you going to accept? And what risks do we need to make sure that we are putting controls in place to protect? It's your risk tolerance, and that's a C-level conversation that ultimately goes around how we're protecting our data and how we're monitoring the use of that data. We get to that, in a secular motion, and it's a constantly changing environment as we think about it from a cloud perspective. There is that environment is always changing. We need to make sure that we are going through our due diligence and our due care throughout. So this is a short little 30-minute. I know I scheduled this for an hour, but I've been talking for the last 2 hours. So this one comes in a little bit short, but just to summarize what I was just saying on the previous slide. Utilize the tools that you have, the tools that are available to you within Microsoft, within Azure, within Microsoft 365, and think about planning for a zero trust environment. Whether that's for any one or all of these pillars. Those are all things that you utilize for securing in the cloud, and securing identity, networking, infrastructure, application, devices, and data are all the pillars that you think about. Again, you should be thinking about these anyway if you're thinking about a defense in depth approach, but think of the CIA triad of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and think about how zero trust and that verify explicitly, the principles of least privilege, and assuming breach, those three levels all play a role in how we are architecting for zero trust. And like I said, if you want some more information on this particular aspect of things, I kind of put a case study, kind of use case type of scenario in my blog that was with Azure Spring Clean. You can access it on my blog site on captainhyperscaler.github.io and get a little bit more information about this as well. So again, here is my my website, my LinkedIn, my Twitter, also upcoming events. I have a couple of different video casts and a podcast with Connecting in the Clouds, as well as Head Securely in the Cloud. So I look forward to seeing you on those. Have a YouTube channel for Connecting in the Cloud, so feel free to subscribe. Head Securely in the Clouds is my company podcast that is on all of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of those areas. You can find the additional sessions that we have for Global Azure on Gimme Cloud Talks, as well as I'll be doing a session on the 17th of May for Sci-Fi DevCon, which is my friend Brian Gorman, fellow MVP and MCT's annual May the 4th be with you month-long event. I think he's changing the tagline to "This is the May," but it's a fun little. All of the sessions are sci-fi related, in maybe discussion topics or just for fun. We bring it into the title and things like that. I'm actually doing one that's around zero trust and defense in depth next week in my 17th of May session, which is around how the Avengers could have used zero trust and defense in depth to protect the Infinity Stones. So that should be fun. But I want to thank everybody for attending. Again, shorter session here. We will be back. Alec will be presenting at the top of the hour. So recommend that you attend that event with Alec. It's Alec Harrison, right? Don't want to get his name wrong. Yeah, Alec Harrison is doing a Azure OpenAI. So we've got 2 more sessions today, one at the top of the hour and then one a couple hours later. The plan changed a little bit due to Elhan Yusufov having a little bit of having a conflict today, but he'll be back tomorrow with a bicep session. So thanks to him, thanks to all the presenters for Gimme Cloud Talks to support Global Azure, a global event by the community for the community. So thanks everybody, thanks to all the organizers, and have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of the sessions.